Hi, I'm Mike Farrell, longtime business and cable journalist, and doing this podcast to look at different issues that are facing small and medium-sized cable operators. Something that's been near and dear to my heart for quite a while. And I have Eric Hybertson, excuse me, who's the CEO of Hyberspace, a consultancy in Denver that focuses specifically on small, medium-sized cable operators. So I'm just going to get right into it and talk with you there, Eric, and just say, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing small and medium-sized operators today?
Hi, Mike. Thanks very much for that question. I think we need to be talking a lot about it. The problem I see that really is creating a lot of symptoms in our industry is market saturation. By that, we mean in each local market, there are more and more entrants into the broadband provider space, which has a lot of effects, right? It depresses revenue in the form of ARPU as there's more competition for broadband services. And it also, of course, is depressing margins as the costs have not gone down. They've certainly gone up recently. So from a broadband to broadband perspective, it can be a little challenging. What we're focusing on now is looking at what the opportunities bring in the face of this competition. And specifically, we're looking at familiar and new services to the cable industry that can help cable providers in each market provide a very compelling and competitive solution that is including broadband, but also adjacent to it.
So ARPU's down, customer acquisition costs are up, CapEx is up. You know, that's a song that we've heard played for many, many years. So, but one thing I want to ask you is, is it different now for smaller and medium-sized operators? And, you know, with all the competition that's out there and the competitive pressures, is time running out for them?
Yeah, great questions on both sides. So time is not running out. The broadband market continues to be very strong. It continues to represent a valuable entry in each of the subscribers' budgets. So there's always going to be opportunity to move forward in our industry. We're here to help. So what is different about today's market, of course, is the fierce competition on the broadband side, where cable has really had a really good product for a long time. There are a couple things that are really good about what's changing these days. Beyond the CapEx going up, there are now more and more cloud native services, AI native services that represent exciting and compelling new applications that will enhance the value of the broadband product in a way that other competitors in local markets choose not to or simply cannot compete in. Those other competitors are generally funded with a very narrow scope, which is increasing homes passed for the connectivity product only. As cable companies, we've always had more services related to video and now MVNO. So when we look at those services, and what's new on the horizon is being able to deploy those services in a cloud native way that can reduce CapEx from an upfront perspective. This enables a really good opportunity for cable companies to look at those specifically.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned just how different the competitors are today. That they're basically focused on broadband only. It's not like the old days when you were going up against, the big guys who had a pretty good product suite. But what I'm wondering too is, and we can drill down on this in later installments, but can you give me kind of, your just, initial thoughts on the competitive landscape? How different are these guys, primarily fiber providers who are competing on speed and pricing, and are we seeing a lot more of these? I think, and it seems like we are. That you know, a lot of these guys are getting backing and going into markets that once were not considered attractive. And I guess first question is what is making these markets attractive?
Yeah, a great question. So what we're seeing at Hyberspace is that the number of competitors, it's changing. Yes, there are a lot, but the strategic growth of those competitors is really what's we're focusing on from a challenge perspective. So
Mhm.
all kinds of headlines in the news related to consolidation, even in the fiber space, the fixed wireless access space, things like that. When we look at the competition holistically, even if the number of them may be steady or shrinking based on this consolidation effect, their ability to compete continues to grow. What we believe is the opportunity is that even within that growth in the strategic nature of it, and maybe even in the funding nature of it, they're just not expanding in a way that that really puts cable into a corner. It doesn't. Cable can outperform in a variety of ways. But I want to address the question you posed about why it's so attractive now. And one of the things that, again, it's the opportunity that we see that if you consider a market to be underserved, it may be that the cable company, the incumbent cable franchise in that area, was waiting for RDOF funding or BEAD funding to get to that area, things like that. That's happening. That's great. We need to continue doing that. But also the way prior to like the last couple of years, the way that a cable company could serve a particular market that might be considered underserved is a very capex heavy or even sort of antiquated SaaS model where the margins just are very, very challenging in those types of areas. So you have like local fiber companies that spring up, they're able to provide connectivity. They don't have necessarily the baggage of trying to monetize very capex heavy services. They're able to serve with these cloud native services in the connectivity realm. So you're seeing some growth in like the commercial services sector, the enterprise sector, but it's still limited. It's always going to be limited to that commercial connectivity product. So where cable can thrive and cable can be much more competitive is getting in there with those same types of services, cloud native, AI native, but with the added benefit of having local data centers, capacity at local data centers, including power connectivity, things like that, and then cloud native services that may even run locally within those data centers. There's a huge competitive advantage that opens up all kinds of opportunities, not just for new revenue, but also for higher margin revenue that those local fiber companies just will not compete for a long time.
Mhm. You touched on margins. That was one thing. One of my favorite things to touch on, to tell you the truth. Margin compression, especially, because you look back at beginnings of broadband, margins were gigantic. They were 90% plus because the infrastructure was already there. But now, I mean, because of building fiber networks and all additional costs kind of put on, I mean, our margin. I mean, how much are margins shrinking in your idea, and how can I mean, is it just a matter of adding more products to the mix that will increase that, or is there a way to be more efficient inside each of these product lines to kind of boost margins?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because the answer is not straightforward. It's not simple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason why Hyberspace is really focused in this area is to try and simplify the path forward to make sure that margins continue to grow. So as cable companies and even local fiber companies are racing towards multiple gigabit per second services and investing in their networks so that within the arms race of speed, everybody is keeping up. That investment is not necessarily reaping returns that we once had in the broadband product, as you
Mhm,
described,
mhm, mhm.
right? That investment is getting more and more as we're putting more things in the ground. But also because of the competition, it's unfortunate that customer acquisition costs just go up. When there's more competition, you're having to offer more discounts. You're having to pay more for local salespeople and promotions and things like that. You probably would be spending a lot more on marketing than you otherwise would when there is less competition. So those things are driving the compression in margins. And what we're seeing from the opportunity perspective is as those investments are moving forward, you want to bring new applications along with it that drive the value of that investment. So speed alone, we are starting to see the law of diminishing returns. It is an uncomfortable space because we have already committed so much money into these things like increasing speed and increasing reach. So let's backfill that value proposition with more applications that are branded with each MSO that drive the value of the brand and the new connectivity that has been invested in. Those new services are the ones that you can have a lot higher margins on because there's, as in an underserved market, as we described before, those new services are now going to be something familiar to those communities, but otherwise out of reach until an MSO brings them to market. And if they're branded with the MSO, it really it increases the value of that multiple times to be able to bring the brand and the value to your subscriber base.
So when we used to talk about bundling, it used to be 3 products, and then mobile came along and it was 4, right? But there have always been other products that have kind of sat in the back, that were using the same network infrastructure and were just as valuable to the customer. They just weren't really pushed that hard. Is that what you're talking about now? Is that, those products can start, coming to the forefront, you know, could it also mean too, just the way these products are packaged, that it used to be before, triple play, 30, 30, 30, right? And, but now it seems like customers want things a little more customized, a little more, focused on what they feel their needs are. Is that one way to kind of tweak the bundle so that it gets, more traction?
Yeah, absolutely. What we're advocating for and what we help our customers define, and our friends, of course, too, is a renewal of the bundle.
Right.
So as we are seeing in the market, I don't think that these trends are any secret, right? There was somewhat of a disaggregation. The bundle kind of blew up. As landline voice started to kind of get a little less popular, mobile offerings from MNOs started to drop in price. That people were starting to get pulled away from the bundle, and of course, the advent of direct to consumer streaming apps, things like that, kind of blew it up. Now we're seeing trends where the disaggregation is starting to become exhausting for subscribers. And now they're looking for new solutions. Well, guess what? We've had the same solution. We can renew the solution so that the branding of it basically meets the subscriber where they're going to be. And you are now describing the value of the service in new and exciting ways for the subscriber. You're rescuing them from hunting and pecking for all the things that they want to do. You have a reasonable collection of applications that they can choose from that are under your brand, and it improves the nature of your relationship with the subscriber. It's a very positive thing. And we've been talking about calling it the virtuous cycle, where as the brand is more recognized and the value of those services now starts to come to fruition, now subscribers get more comfortable with the relationship with their cable company, and they start asking for more things. That only raises revenue and increases margins when you deploy these new things in a cloud native way. Hyberspace is here to bring that new ecosystem to bear so that we can choose market by market what those services might be in the most economical way, not just for the subscriber, but also for the operator.
One thing I've liked about your approach to this whole business is that you realize that every customer is different.
Right.
And and you tailor it seems like you tailor a strategy for each individual customer. And just wanted to see if you could kind of walk me through kind of how you do that. When you first approach a customer, kind of what is the initial pitch?
Yeah, that's right. We do. So there are a couple of different ways that we are kind of opening the conversation. One
Hmm.
is that market specific one, right? Not just every service provider is different. Every market is different.
Hmm.
They have a different set of services. Sometimes you have a very strong tech-minded municipal government. Sometimes the phone company there has been experiencing a long period of success, and so there's a little bit more to displace. Things like that. We open the conversation on that side of it with taking a look at what those markets are, what services are in those markets, what their offerings are, what the pricing of those offerings are, and where the opportunities may lie. On the corporate side, right, how the strategy unfolds, how the C-suite is looking at its operations and its vendor partnerships, things like that. We need to take those market specific opportunities and line them up with what's already going on. Every single cable operator out there is already working very, very hard on the concepts we've been talking about. This is not meant to take away from any of that. It's meant to add, it's meant to accelerate. So when we take a market specific view and bring it into the C suite, we're starting to talk about the strategy of how new services are going to move the needle on margin and on revenue. Once we tie it to those business outcomes, it can become very simple to justify investment in new services or in the organization to ensure that it is the right size, has the right skill set to be able to embrace these new services and get them out the door very quickly. What Hyberspace does in that regard is to take a look at the organization, took a look at the vendor ecosystem, and make sure that everyone is up to date with the latest offerings from the vendor ecosystem, but also the latest trends when it comes to AI native type of processes and data consideration.